Coming up on Oakdale Update, Oakdale Tree Board Chair Nick Kantola joins us in studio to talk all things trees. We'll tell you about the Arbor Day tree giveaway and the Tree Trek program. We'll also discuss some tips to help keep your trees alive and healthy. Stay tuned, Oakdale Update is straight ahead. Hello and welcome to Oakdale Update. I'm your host, Frank Arcello. This is the City of Oakdale's news and information program about your community. I'm now joined by Oakdale Tree Board Chair Nick Kantola. Nick, thanks for joining us on Oakdale Update.
Happy to be here.
Okay, let's talk a little bit. Tell me about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Nick. I've been the chair of the tree board for the City of Oakdale since last summer. Been on the tree board for 4 years now.
Okay.
I've got a degree in biology with a field emphasis from the University of Wisconsin at River Falls, and I'm a professional arborist.
Okay, so an arborist. What is an arborist?
Sure. Essentially I'm a tree doctor. I meet with people, talk with them about problems their trees have, help diagnose issues, come up with plans for maintenance, management, treatment, things like that. Just help people care for the biggest part of their landscape.
Okay, where did you get your degree from?
River Falls, University of Wisconsin at River Falls.
Okay, that is kind of an agricultural type
It is,
school,
yeah, they've got a very good ag program over there.
Is that right? Okay, so what is your job? You have a job too, is that correct?
Yeah, yep. Like I said, I'm a professional arborist, ISA certified arborist, MN4623A if you want to check the credential. I meet with clients on their properties daily, help them plan the care of their trees.
Who do you work for?
I work for Rainbow Tree Care.
And they are located where?
We've got 3 locations. Our main office is in Minnetonka, but we've got an office in Little Canada, and we've got an office in Burnsville.
So did you live in Oakdale, do you?
I do live in Oakdale, yes, sir.
You did, okay. So, how did you develop an interest in trees and arboretum?
Sure.
How did you develop an interest in that?
Sure, I got into arboriculture. Honestly, I kind of fell into it. I had my degree in biology, was looking for something to do after I graduated, and ended up getting a job with a tree company in the office doing inside sales, working with their consultants to help manage clients on the back end, and just knew lots about botany from my education and tree systems, but kind of fell in love with arboriculture, working on that end of it, and it's been fantastic. I love it.
So what exactly do you do during the day, your job? And what do you do?
Lots of windshield time. I drive around. My territory encompasses basically from like Woodbury south down towards Hastings, and then west towards Invergrove and like West St. Paul, Mendota, that kind of southeast corner of the city. And just drive around. People call into the office, ask for an appointment for an arborist to come out, talk about tree pruning, talk about tree removals, talk about insect management, fungus management, things like that. That's what I do every day. And then set up the work, get the plan set for our crews that do the work to go out and be on site and get the work done.
Well, that's interesting. You got to love it. I mean,
it's not a job. I mean, I get to play with trees every day.
That's good. All right, let's talk about the Nature Center here in Oakdale. That is quite a gem, isn't it? I mean,
it's a jewel for sure.
It is. Now, tell us about it. Tell us about about the property and what's there and everything.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to how big it is, but it's a fantastic little ecosystem over there. Swamps and upland forests, and there's some really nice upland aspen groves over there. That's probably my favorite part is getting in with the aspens. It's my favorite tree. But then down in the swampy part's really cool. There's that big lake with the new walkway over the lake part. It's a very cool spot.
Yes, I've walked over that bridge many times, and depending on the time of the year, there's swans and
Absolutely.
geese and ducks and...
Place is lousy with birds. It's great.
It is. It's just beautiful. I interviewed a tree lady. She's a local lady, a bird lady, and she contended that there's just a ton of different variety of birds in that forest.
Absolutely.
Do you know anything about?
So I've taken a couple ornithology classes, but I'm certainly not a bird expert, so I couldn't necessarily speak to how many birds are there. I've got a poster on the wall at home of all the birds of North America. I mean, there's hundreds of birds on the poster. Whether or not all of them are at the nature center, I couldn't say, but there's a huge variety of all kinds of different wildlife at that place.
They're pretty unmolested in there too, aren't they?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah,
not lack of people and.
Yeah, and people tend to do a good job, as far as I can tell, of not disturbing any of the natural areas and staying on the path where they're supposed to, which is good.
So, I mean, there is just all kinds of landscape in that park, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
And I don't even know how much acreage is in there.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to that either.
200 acres or something, does that sound right?
I wouldn't even feel comfortable venturing a guess.
Okay. Well, I know in the history of that is it was donated, it was a farmland at one time, and the people donated it to the city, and I think the city bought some more property to make it as big as it is. But it's a gem, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
a real jewel.
We're lucky to have that.
Yes, we are. Okay, so there's a new system in the nature center, and we'll talk about it, but it's called the Tree Trek program. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the Tree Trek's really cool. They're these brown stakes. You walk through the woods, and near the path there'll be these brown stakes that have a tag on them, a QR code that you can scan with your smartphone, and it pops up this information from the University of Minnesota with all this great information about the tree, the natural history of the tree, facts about the tree. And it's all just contained right there on that website. And you can walk through and see all the different tree species. I think there's 50 plus that are in there. It's a really cool program.
Are the shrubs? I think there's shrubs that are involved in this too.
It's
isn't
trees and shrubs. There are some of the lignified, the woody shrubs, the bigger shrub species that are in there as well.
So it tells you the history of the tree, and I mean, they aren't planted trees, are they? They're natural trees?
It depends. A previous city forester did a really good job of kind of diversifying some stuff that was in there, and planting a lot of really cool native species in there that weren't necessarily present, but could have been present. So yes, there are native trees that are in there that have been growing there, and then there's some other things in there as well.
And so are there enough interesting facts on a tree that makes it worthwhile to?
I'm biased, but I think so, yeah.
So like what some of the things that you would discover?
Sure. So it'll tell you things like, how big that tree is going to get. Like if you're planning on planting something on your own property, some examples of, how big that tree is going to get. Things like animals that are dependent on the tree species. There's quite frankly a lot of interesting things about them, but I'm having a hard time at the moment coming up with anything specific.
Okay. And then what about shrubs now? What's interesting about shrubs?
I think there's lots of interesting stuff about shrubs, but again, it's habitat, it's growth habit, things that plants have historically been used for, like dogwoods. The name dogwood is a appropriation of the English word dag, which the Old English word dag, which meant arrow. So that's why they call them dogwoods, because the shafts were long and straight. So things like that are things you might discover.
Oh, how interesting is that? And you say there's about 50 varieties?
Yeah, I believe we did 50. I think we did 50 trees on the Tree Trek.
Okay, so this setup was done with partnership with several other organizations. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. So first and foremost, most of the bill was footed by the Maplewood Oakdale Lions Club, so a big thank you to them. But a lot of the information comes from the University of Minnesota and the Extension Program and the Minnesota DNR, and then obviously the Public Works Department in the city did the legwork of getting everything set up and installed, and identifying the tree species that we wanted to use.
Boy, that is so great. Okay, now we got another topic here, Arbor Day tree giveaway.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, this year's going to be a little bit different than in years past. Previously, people would show up, they'd line up, get a number for the giveaway, and and then it was first come, first serve. Everybody would stand around, your number would get called, and you get to pick one of the tree varieties that we were giving away. This year, everything's going to be pre-registration online. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, the city just posted on their Facebook page a couple days ago some information about how that's going to go. And then when we get closer to Arbor Day, we're going to, the city is going to post the registration page on their website, and that'll have a ton more information, like what kind of trees we're going to be giving away and all the process for that. And it's going to be a drive-up process this year, so it's going to be kind of drive-through.
So you drive in, open your trunk, and the tree will get put in there?
Yeah, you'll let them know what kind of tree you want.
But how many trees are involved in this? How many are going to be given away?
We typically do 200 trees, 50 of each species, usually.
Okay, so I was noticing that the U of M and the U.S. Forest Program and all that, they're all involved in this. Are they doing this elsewhere too?
The tree track?
Yes.
So the tree track is certainly spread throughout the state. That's a state program. I couldn't speak to where else it's being done, and I apologize about that. But it's not just Oakdale. It's a state program.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I digressed there.
That's okay.
Okay. So Arbor Day tree giveaway. Now, you didn't say you didn't know how many varieties of trees are going to be given this year.
So we usually give away 4 tree species.
Oh.
The last time we talked about the tree giveaway when we selected the species was pre-pandemic, if I'm remembering correctly. So I don't remember off the top of my head what we're giving away. But in the past, we've given away several broadleaf deciduous trees, and then at least 1 conifer species, because lots of people like those conifers.
So when you give these away, you will have specialists there to help. And so how are you going to work that with the not being able to just talk through the windows? Is that how you're going to do that?
Kinda, yeah. So in the past, we've had, so we'd give away the tree. The people would pick their tree. They'd take it over. We'd have a couple of people to help do like a hydro soak. Like it's like a water that's like been treated with nutrients to help get the roots stimulated. And then if necessary, there are master gardeners to help with like root pruning to get the tree ready to go. We give away bare root trees. So instead of like a big chunk of soil, which is super heavy, it's just a tree and its roots, and the roots are in a bag to stop them from oxidizing and stuff. But then you dip the tree, put it in the bag, take it home, and stick it in the ground right away.
Without the bag?
Without the bag, yeah. Remove the bag for sure.
Okay, is it a plastic bag? Or
yeah,
what
plastic bag.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So you say you trim the roots. You trim the roots before you plant it. I've never heard of that.
That can help stimulate root growth. A response to pruning above ground in trees is growing, because the tree wants to replace the biomass that it's lost. But you have the same thing with roots. So planting a tree is a stressful thing for a tree. It's been growing in this specific location. It's used to the soil, the water patterns, the sunlight that it's been getting, and you're taking it from there and putting it somewhere else, which is probably very different. And so pruning the roots can help stimulate new root development.
Oh, is that right?
Which is helpful for the tree.
Okay. So what's the procedure? You dig a hole and then put loose soil in there, or don't you?
Yeah, you don't want to compact it. You want the tree where the root flares out from vertical to horizontal. You want that to be just slightly above ground level, and then you dig a hole that's kind of just deep enough to accommodate that and get the roots spread outwards rather than down, because most of the water is going to penetrate into the top couple inches of soil, especially in that hole that you're digging. That's nice loose soil, but then the roots will start to move out, and the tree will start to establish.
Okay. What's a procedure for fertilizing a tree?
Sure.
How soon do you fertilize a tree?
That's a good question. It kind of depends on the fertilizer that you're going to use. A lot of people like to use fertilizer spikes, and those are fine, but they tend to have nutrients in them that really concentrate in the area right where the stake goes, which can burn the roots, which for a new establishing tree isn't necessarily what you want. Plus, a lot of fertilizers tend to push succulent growth. They're high in nitrogen because people want them to, they want their whatever they're fertilizing to start showing signs of having been fertilized right away. And that's not necessarily good for establishing root development. You want a balanced fertilizer with the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, not a high nitrogen fertilizer.
Okay.
So for a new tree, you may not even need to fertilize that thing right away.
Give it a week or 2 or 3 or a month
Give it a season.
A season, really?
Let that thing get used to its environment without augmenting the soil.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. Now, one other thing that always has been concerned about is how deep do you plant that tree? You know, you hear that it's supposed to be no where the tree line was.
Yeah.
Or the dirt line was, I guess. Not any deeper than that, but
yeah.
so what?
So if you plant a tree too deep, where the soil level is, the tree will start to put out roots right there because the tree wants its roots where the water is permeating to. If you stick the roots too far down, water's gonna have a hard time getting down that far. And if you plant it too high, then the roots can desiccate and dry out. So you kind of got to find that happy medium where you want to plant it basically how the tree was. Yeah.
Is it better to be a little higher than lower?
Yeah, better higher than lower.
It is, okay. Now what about putting bark and mulch around the tree?
Mulch is a good thing.
Is that okay?
So for a tree, if you think about where a tree grows, like in the woods, you're not going to find turf grass growing right up to the base of the tree.
Right.
That's a super artificial thing that really only happens in suburban lawns. If you put bark mulch around that tree, well, any kind of mulch, any kind of woody mulch around the tree, you'll grow 50% more root material underneath the mulch than you will underneath turf grass. So the tree, the mulch recycles into the soil, creates more organic material in there. Those are nutrients that the tree needs. Those are things that it would get in the forest where that leaf litter and all the decaying stuff cycles back in. And that's all stuff that we take away in the suburban setting because we don't want, the leaves and stuff to kill our grass, which is totally fair, but it's not necessarily good for the tree.
Okay, now ash borer.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just invading this neck of the woods, all over the place. So do you have a treatment for that?
Yeah, there's a very successful treatment for that. It's a chemical intervention. You inject the tree. Well, you can do a soil application under certain circumstances, but the one that most professional companies are going to use is going to be a tree injection. And that's going to move through the water conductive system of the tree where the bugs are actually feeding. The larva of the bug is what's chewing through the water conductive tissue. So we treat that, and then it kills the bug as it feeds.
When you say injection, we give it a shot?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Really?
So it's a series of injection ports, little needles that go into the tree. They're not really little. They're 15, 30 seconds. It's a little less than half an inch injection into the tree, and then we pump the chemical into the tree, and then the tree uses its own water system to move through the crown.
Oh, really? And that kills the larva? Is that correct?
It kills them as they feed. Yes, so we're not going to get all of them, but we keep the population low enough that it can't kill the tree. And that's actually a common misconception. People assume that if they treat their tree, there's not going to be any dieback or any signs of the bug in the tree, and that's just not true. The bug is going to be there no matter what we do, but we can keep the population low enough that it's not going to kill the tree.
Really? So is this an expensive process?
Not necessarily. It's depending on, it's usually charged as a per diameter inch. So if you contact a professional tree company, they'll send someone out, they'll measure the tree and get you a price based on the diameter inch of the tree. And then typically it's somewhere between like $6 and $10 a diameter inch.
Oh, okay. Okay, so now our communities, like City of Oakdale, are they using this method at all?
Yep, so the city is treating some of their own city trees, but then as part of that, they work with a private company that does offer a special city price as part of the city contract to the City of Oakdale to treat, so private citizens can treat their trees.
Okay, so what you say? The city helps private citizens too?
The private citizens pay for it themselves, but the city has negotiated a rate as part of the city contract they have.
Okay, so is it you consider it very effective?
Yeah, it's I believe the data shows it to be 99% effective if you treat every 2 years, and that's every 2 years going forward.
Okay, will that eventually kill them then if you keep treating it? If you keep treating it?
Probably not. There may come a point in the future where we can stop treating ash trees, but if you look at something like Dutch elm disease, there are people who've been treating their trees every 3 years since the late 70s. And if you want to guarantee your tree's not going to die, you just can't stop.
Ooh, that's not good.
Probably. I mean, it is what it is. If the tree is valuable to you, for some people that's absolutely a value proposition that they're down for, and for some people it isn't, and that's okay.
Okay. Well, let's talk about climate change. Now that has changed so much, and I guess I asked you before. Will I eventually, living in Minnesota, be able to plant a palm tree in my backyard
Like
eventually?
if you want to build a greenhouse, you probably could. So the data, the forecast models that I've seen have been showing us shifting more towards like a Nebraska climate. I believe there's a hardiness zone 6. And so depending on where you're at in the Twin Cities, you're either 5A or 5B. And then eventually as we warm, we'll shift towards slightly warmer. So some of our colder tolerant tree species are probably going to get, it's going to get too warm for them to survive. And so we'll start to see some more southern tree species starting to shift north. I mean, this is over, hundreds of thousands of years that we're talking about, but it's, as tree species start to move, like they don't do anything fast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have read someplace that the cold winters in Minnesota are good for trees because it kills the bugs and the larvae and whatever else. So how's that going to affect that? And we haven't had a cold winter, a bad cold winter. So I mean, assuming that if that's true, then it's probably not working anymore, correct?
Yeah, so that's certainly been, a lot of people are hopeful that if it gets cold enough, that might be one of the, I think people are wishful thinking that at least something good is coming out of the cold. But the reality is the inside of a tree is a microclimate, and those bugs are essentially cold adapted. And even if some are killed by the cold, the ones that survive are cold tolerant now, right? I mean, that's how evolution works. The ones that survive pass along those traits to their offspring. And so even if some are getting killed by the cold, the ones that aren't are the hardy ones, and they're the ones that are living.
They're going to keep going.
They're going to keep going.
Okay. All right. So now, what about crops and that kind of thing? As far as the line is getting further south. So what about crops and all that? How's that going to affect with climate change?
I don't know a ton about crops and how that's going to affect. I'm certainly not an agronomist. I know enough about basic botany to be dangerous, but I apologize. I just couldn't really speak to how that's going to affect any agricultural things.
Okay. Well, what about trees then? The trees they're starting to. Are trees dying off that need cold at all? Is that happening?
So there's a lot of research on that that's ongoing. But so take, for example, a tree like a red maple. Red maple cold hardiness and red maple survival is predicated on getting, a certain number of cold days. So if it doesn't get cold enough in the winter, then red maples get really stressed out.
Really?
So they're a cold adapted tree that needs that cold weather to survive. And if they don't have it, then those trees are going to be inherently stressed and more susceptible to secondary pests and pathogens.
What about syrup? Don't they need cold and
that's
nights
true.
And all that?
The cold weather is necessary to get the tree primed to start flowing when you're talking about sugar maples. That's certainly that's a potential impact. If we don't get cold weather, if it starts to warm up, it's going to be harder to produce syrup.
Okay, is syrup a big industry in Minnesota?
I unfortunately don't have a lot of information on that.
Okay.
That's not anything I've ever really dealt with, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. So, so if anybody's interested in, first of all, I think the tree board, you're short of people right now, I think.
So I think we've just kind of got ourselves right-sized. We have a group of people who are super dedicated. We've got some master gardeners who are super knowledgeable, which they're great to have on the team. We've got some well-educated local citizens who really care about trees, which is really cool to have on the team. And then I'm a professional arborist, so I like helping out. So I think we've got the right size for the tree board, but if people are interested, that's certainly something we talk about.
You could always use some extras.
Yeah.
You could always use it. Now, I know master gardeners are very involved with, with the tree board, aren't they?
Yep.
And what do they contribute to your group?
Knowledge. It's people who have this information and they're happy to share it. That's I think the best thing about the Master Gardener program is it gives people who care about plants and trees an opportunity to share the knowledge that they've accumulated, which is very cool.
Yep. So so if anybody's interested in either joining your commission or just in general, if they have problems with their trees or anything, who would they contact and how?
That's a good question. So if you have just general questions about tree care or trees, the University of Minnesota Extension has lots of good information. Master gardeners do lots of volunteering. And then as far as the tree board goes, we're actively looking into, it's an open discussion about how we can do a little bit more community outreach than we've done in the past beyond just giving out trees and doing a tree planting and a buckthorn removal every year. So we're looking at continuing, we have done like informational tables at the summer farmers market. So that's something we want to continue doing. And then other community ed outreach things that, if anybody has any ideas, we're open. We like to help.
Okay, so just one quick question here. Buckthorn.
Buckthorn.
That is just all over the place,
It's
isn't
the
it?
worst.
And I've seen pictures of you people having a buckthorn removal program. Weekend, they have a weekend of it, and the city collects all the buckthorn.
Yeah, the city does two things for buckthorn. So we do a buckthorn, like a buckthorn roundup, where if you have buckthorn on your property, you bundle it up, the butt end of the cut branches out, and the city will come by, like on the curb, and the city will come by and grab those. We do that once a year, and then we also do a buckthorn removal event. We've typically done that at the Oakdale Nature Reserve the last couple of years.
Yes.
And so that's a really fun time too, where we'll get some local volunteers, including a bunch of high school kids, and the guys from the city come through and cut stuff, and then we just drag it out and they chip it up and try to clear out some of that buckthorn from the park.
I've seen pictures of it before and after, and it's just unbelievable.
It is.
It's an insidious plant, isn't it?
It is. Well, and the seeds can live dormant in the soil for 10 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's a process to remove that stuff. Just cutting it down once and hauling it out of there isn't enough. It's an ongoing battle, and that stuff is here, and it's probably never going away. And I hate to be a gloom and doom, everything's here and never going away kind of guy, but buckthorn's here, and we got to cut it down, or it's going to take over everything.
I talked to a lady that was involved in that program, clearing the buckthorn, and she said that they have approached people that have tons of buckthorn, say in their property, on the road, off the road, and they asked them, would you be willing to let us come in and cut? And they don't want it.
It's a privacy screen.
They want the privacy. So that's kind of a tough one, isn't it?
It is hard. The DNR labels it a noxious weed, and there are some municipalities that do get really aggressive about removing it. But yeah, I understand people wanting that privacy screen. I get that.
Yeah, yep.
I just wish it wasn't buckthorn.
Yes, because it kills off everything else, doesn't it?
Yes, so buckthorn is really good at growing in the shade, but not everything is, and they grow really densely together and create this really thick understory that prevents light from getting down and stops basically anything but buckthorn from germinating.
Well, Nick, we are out of time, but I want to thank you for joining us today, and you've enlightened us a lot.
Thank you for having me.
And I appreciate it. Thank you. That's all we have time for on this month's Oakdale Update. Just a quick reminder that winter parking rules are still in effect until April 1st. Snow sculpture contest entries are due on March 31st. The theme is Everybody's Hero. For everyone at the City of Oakdale, thanks for watching.